Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So in this one here, I wanted to talk about a question, or I guess a comment that has been coming up quite a bit in the last couple of days, and that is regarding, I guess, should The Walking Dead have kept going on? Like, should there have been a season 12, a season 13, 14, 15, and so on? So yeah, I do want to talk about that and give some thoughts on that. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2 episode 3 airs tomorrow, so I will have my review, my trailer breakdowns, and yeah, everything out tomorrow as well. A lot of videos throughout the week. Next Friday is going to be Comic-Con, and then the day after, I believe, is Palais Fest. So a lot of Walking Dead stuff coming up here, and then obviously episode 4 the following day on that Sunday. So it's going to be pretty busy over the next week. I'm really excited. I'm really hoping for like a really good Rick and Michonne update for Comic-Con next Friday. Like just something. Like I don't even know what, but I want people to talk about it. So yeah, but definitely make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my content breaking down all of that. But let's get into this question here. So should The Walking Dead have kept going for a season 12, 13, 14, 15, etc.? Originally the plan was for the show to last many more years, and the other characters would leave and have their own spin-offs, and then eventually would return to The Walking Dead. And I guess there would be an endgame event that would eventually happen there as soon as Rick did come back, I guess, at some point. I don't know what the actual plan was, but all I know is, at least from Daryl and Carol's perspective, that the plan was for Daryl and Carol to leave the show, then eventually come back to the show, right? And I will say, because there's not a lot of Walking Dead shows out right now, like there's 2 shows and there's only 6 episodes, I feel like I would appreciate that a lot right now. I think that having a Walking Dead season 12 would be pretty great, just to sort of focus on something else. Other characters involved in all of this here. I will say, in terms of Dead City, like Maggie and Negan spinoff, I don't know if they were ever supposed to leave the show. Like, I kind of like the idea if The Walking Dead continued for like a season 12, 13, 14, 15 or whatever, if like all the characters still left, like if we still have the spinoffs that we do have right now, like basically still be in the same place we're at right now, but The Walking Dead is still going on, which right now would be on like season 13 or something like that. So I think that that would have been really cool. Honestly, I think that they probably could have come up with a really interesting story. And there's a lot of characters there that they probably honestly could have, first of all, introduced newer characters. And I think they could have done really cool things. The story would have been, I think, really great. I think they really could have done something there. I think that the spinoffs are needed. I think that if the spinoffs never existed and they kept all the characters on the show, like Daryl and Carol, Maggie and Negan and whatnot, then it definitely would be a different show, because we would be watching The Walking Dead still, and we wouldn't have the Fran storyline and all of that. I mean, a part of me wonders, like, imagine all the characters still stayed on the show, and it was like season 13 or something right now. And, you know, maybe we don't have the Fran storyline exactly, but something similar to that happens, right? Where the characters end up having to leave Alexandria a little bit. Maybe you go back and you touch on some of the, you know, characters in Alexandria and sort of, you know, bring up a story there, but maybe the story still sort of goes elsewhere, right? But this way you have all the characters together. That is interesting, you know, like that idea I think is kind of cool, but I really like the fact that the spinoffs have, you know, the high budget that it does, because the original show wouldn't have had this, and I also like the setting of the new shows. I think that that really works well. The reason why this came up is because obviously I did a video talking about, you know, a potential Gabriel and Aaron spinoff. Like, could that happen? I was also asked that question in the Q&A, and so a lot of people were starting to talk about that. Like, you know, I would love to see a Gabriel and Aaron spinoff, or they should have kept The Walking Dead going. Like, I don't know why they ended that show. That's the thing I would say, is The Walking Dead ended in a really great way in terms of the comic book storyline, right? Like, if the comic still was going on, then I would say, yes, keep The Walking Dead going. But it ended right where the comic ended, right? And so you can't say that show ever like failed or this and that, or like it went on too long or anything like that. You really can't make an argument at all for any of that. Like, people say that The Walking Dead lasted way too long. It should have been 5 or 6 seasons. I'm like, well, they literally told the comic book story exactly. Like, they told every story from the comic book, right? As soon as the comic book ended, like where that arc ends, that's where The Walking Dead ended. It literally told the story of the comic from beginning to end. And so when I look at The Walking Dead overall, I think of the comic story. It told that comic story, every single arc, really well. You know, some moments were better, some moments were not as good, but it's a very good show. There's a lot of ups and downs, but I think overall it's a solid show. And so I'm happy with where it ended personally. I think that if it went on for a season 12, it does help quite a bit Like, it really does help a lot of, I guess the issues I have right now with The Walking Dead, which is, I guess, just like how connected the world is, because the world does not feel that connected right now. It really doesn't, but it really did beforehand. And it felt like everything was building to this moment or that moment, and there was going to be like this reveal or that reveal. And like right now, everything feels so disconnected that it's frustrating, because, you want to get excited about some stuff, but it just feels like the shows are completely far apart. And again, Dead City is like 6 years in the future still, or 5 or 6 years in the future. So like, that's insane, right? Like, I can't believe that show is that far into the future. The other shows will catch up at some point. That was the same thing with Fear the Walking Dead. Like, Fear the Walking Dead was still, for the most part, a lot of the seasons of Fear the Walking Dead was set like 5 or 6 years before The Walking Dead, right? And so we were always seeing characters way far in the past, and then eventually, they did a time jump and everyone caught up in the timeline. So I imagine for Daryl Dixon and any other spinoff, if they do a Rick and Michonne or The Ones Who Live season 2 or whatever it's going to be, they'll probably jump forward in time quite a bit. And so they'll catch up to Dead City. I just think that means that Dead City's not going to go forward in time too much. If Dead City did do a couple year time jump or something like that, then honestly, I would definitely be very upset with that. Like, I'm not really upset with Dead City's timeline. I think it's kind of insane to jump forward that far into the future, but I'm not really that upset with the timeline because it hasn't affected anything with The Walking Dead yet. Like, it has. I have some questions on, like, well, are Daryl and Carol back in America now? Because if that's so far into the future, has everyone reunited yet? Honestly, I'm guessing probably not. That's stuff that they would definitely hold off on. That's sort of why I'm predicting that Carol doesn't even really know that, I guess Rick made it back to Alexandria, because I feel like that's something that they want to hold off on, right? Like, they want to be able to write that moment, because The Walking Dead likes to have those like really, cool moments where like this person reunites with this person and all that. And if it never really had any of that, there's not a lot to look forward to, right? And so I think that's sort of the issue right now as well, is that there's not a lot to look forward to. Like right now, yes, Rick and Daryl reuniting, that's going to be really fun. I'm really excited for that. But the story building up to it, there's like nothing there. I think with Michonne trying to find Rick, obviously the story was built up really well, right? Like, they built that story up really well in her final episode. We knew of the CRM. We knew where the story was eventually going. We sort of knew the bigger story out there. And for Rick and Daryl's reunion, however that happens, we don't know what that's going to be yet. Like, there's nothing built up there. We're really back down to, I guess just very simple stories. And now Gimple has to build up this world again. And I think that's where I'm at right now overall. And I think that's why a Walking Dead season 12, I think, would help with all of that, is having characters in Alexandria or the Commonwealth, focusing on the story there and just seeing what everyone's lives are like. Morgan would probably be on that show right now, right? So maybe he would be the lead of The Walking Dead. And I would just be interested in seeing how all of that would play out. I think that the ratings would be lower for sure, but I mean, The Walking Dead, at that point, it would be more about Alexandria and what's happening at home. So maybe you don't want to focus on that. Maybe you more want to focus on, I guess, Gabriel and Aaron spinoff specifically, instead of keeping The Walking Dead going. And so it's a different spinoff, in a very similar setting. It just has to feel more connected. It really does. Like, it just doesn't feel that connected in this world, and it's frustrating, I would say, as a fan. That's one of my biggest concerns right now that I've really had all year, but I've been waiting to see how Daryl Dixon's going to play out, and I've been talking about it more in this last week, but I'm going to wait to see how this season plays out first, and then I think I will do some videos talking about that, because again, I'm really hoping for Comic-Con for there to be some sort of announcements or talk, or like, even just like honestly, Gimple just saying, yes, we have plans for crossovers, we have plans for this and that, because then I'm like, all right, so now you actually have a plan of where you're going. But if it is just going to be like, well, we're focusing on very simple stories just like this, like very self-contained stories with these characters, then honestly, it's not as exciting to me. I'll still watch the shows, but it's really not that exciting. What's made this world work really, really well is how everything is sort of connected. And I think if you want The Walking Dead to really, succeed and be like Marvel and everything else, then you kind of need to do that. And yes, The Walking Dead doesn't have to become Marvel, but I don't know, you kind of have to make a decision. Like, are you going to be Breaking Bad, which Breaking Bad already had a spinoff, but are you going to be Breaking Bad or are you going to be Marvel, right? Like, I think The Walking Dead has been more closer to Marvel, I would say, than Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad had 5 seasons, it ended, had another spinoff, I think it had a movie as well. But if The Walking Dead's going to go down that route, then yeah, it's not going to be as successful, but it has the characters, it has the world where it can be like Marvel. Like, obviously, it's not going to be as crazy as Marvel with like superheroes and all that stuff. There's a lot of characters they could always use, but I think that The Walking Dead can create super walkers. You can create different groups around the world. You can build up this really awesome world, which they have done. But it just feels like in the last little bit here that they've been sort of going away from that a little bit. And that's kind of my overall concern, and why when I was originally doing this video, I was like, yeah, you know what? I think of Walking Dead season 12, if The Walking Dead was still going on right now, we would still feel like everything was connected. Like that was the main show to watch, and Daryl and Negan and those spinoffs are just something extra, right? And we would watch them and it would be really exciting, obviously, but we'd all be wondering like, oh, I can't wait for Aaron and Gabriel to find out more about, what's happening with I guess Daryl in France and whatnot. And then maybe we actually see how Carol leaves The Walking Dead. There's some sort of story that builds up there to how she gets to France, right? Like you could actually focus more on the story there on how she finds out. Maybe it happens in like a mid-season finale, and then the second half of the season, you build up that story on how she actually tries to find a plane, and then eventually she leaves, right? And this way you're telling that story on The Walking Dead, and then you're not taking away from the spinoffs. Like I just think that there's a better way to do a lot of this here. But the issue, I think, is interest overall. I think that if The Walking Dead was still going on, again, you don't have that perfect like comic book story told, and interest at this point, I don't know if it would be there for The Walking Dead if the main characters weren't there, right? Like, would people watch that? That's sort of my thing with the Aaron and Gabriel spinoff. Would people watch that? It seems like a lot of people probably would, but I don't know. I think that overall, I don't know if it would be that successful. So it is one of those things that is hard to say. An original series that's set in the Commonwealth, that would be kind of cool. And maybe they go elsewhere afterwards. I think I would really like that. The Walking Dead just needs a little bit more life right now. And, Gimple is sort of running everything. So I'm just really hoping that at Comic-Con next Friday, he does actually, give us some more details on what's happening for the future of The Walking Dead, because it's just it felt like we were really building to something for a long time, and it felt really exciting. And then after the One Sealers finale, again, that's also something I'm going to be very, very frustrated with if Carol does say, like, I don't know who came back. Like, I'm expecting it to be not Rick. Like, it's probably going to be, some other character or something. I have no idea. But doing a scene like that, like, what that's going to be doing, right? Like, that everyone's wondering, oh, is that Rick? And so, yeah, I don't know. But anyways, I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.